Hi, folks. Welcome back to the Life Work Podcast, where we share stories and experiences of people of all walks of life, crafting their joy and meaning for themselves and others while pursuing their passion. And I'll be honest, today's episode is really just an excuse for me to catch up with an old friend. I have here my good friend from college, Helge Bjorland. His wife, Elizabeth, and we went to college together in Thailand like eons ago. And now they have 3 beautiful children together. And Helge is the CEO and co-founder of an AI staffing solutions company for the medical industry. He'll tell you all about it. I'm really excited to hear what that's all about, because my knowledge of AI really just starts and stops with the Terminator and Skynet. But we know that's not what his company's about. So I'm really excited for him to tell us what it is. It's a chance for me to learn more about what AI is and how it improves the quality of life. That's the mission of their company. And it's a learning experience, I think, for a lot of us too, as more and more technology, more AI is embraced in all areas in many industries. So Helge, welcome to the podcast. Tell us about yourself, who you are. Tell us about your company.
Thank you, Wendy. Very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Great to catch up. So maybe first introduce myself.
Yeah.
Since we studied after Thailand, how many years is that?
Oh my gosh, it's been too long. I almost don't even want to try to remember.
Yeah. Let's not think about it.
Yeah, but, exactly.
After that, I worked for large corporate organizations like Equinor. Very, very known in Norway. It's the largest oil company in Norway. And after doing a lot of different positions there, I got interested in data science. This was kind of the early days of data science.
Yeah.
And then I had an MBA from when we studied, and I saw that computer programming and all of that and data science was very interesting. So I also did an additional bachelor, computer science, and kind of moved more and more into the direction of data science and machine learning and AI. So eventually ended up starting and leading a data science center of excellence on the corporate level in Equinor. So that was some exciting times.
Yeah.
Got together a team of people, and among those were 3 of the other co-founders in Globus.AI. So after that, moved to Telenor, which is the largest telecom operator in Norway. Worked with them on their AI journey, and then decided to start my own company with my 3 former colleagues. So right now I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Globus.AI, and we have built a virtual staffing system. So that's what we do.
Yeah, very cool. I want to hear all about it. But one of the things I feel like I really want to try to understand, because I remember when you first told me that you were starting your own company, you know, part of me was so impressed. I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a brave move. You're going to go and start your own company. And then at the same time, I didn't fully understand at the time. I thought you had, just the way you described, a really successful corporate career. You know, it seemed like you were managing a team and you were growing the space in the company, and you had just joined a different company, I think, the kind of around the time when you decided to start your own company. So what made you want to do that? Why not just continue down, and you could stay in data science and do that in a corporate organization? Why did you want to do that on your own?
Yeah, it's probably several things leading up to it, but one of the most important is kind of this. We really saw the potential. I saw the potential, and my colleagues of AI when we were doing this data science center of excellence. How it could help in many different areas, and just this feeling that I really wanted to use this this competence and this experience to do something good, because I was sure that was possible. And actually, my son Axel Cornelius, when he was, I think he was about 3 years old, we were at this like hardware store, and there was this lawnmower, this robotic lawnmower going around, as a demonstration on the floor. And I told him, like, be careful and so on. And I was just over by the cash registry, lost him for a second there. And then he was on the floor with his hand out. And then accidentally, this lawnmower just drove over his hand, like it turned around.
Oh my God.
And cut like 3 of his fingers. And almost cut them off. And we were kind of rushed into the emergency room, straight into the ER, and got this, a lot of back and forth. The doctor came, they did the surgery. And then the thing that sticks is kind of when I talked to the nurse afterwards, she told me, well, you're really lucky. He will kind of be able to use all his fingers again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because the best surgeon was on duty today. So he managed to sew everything back, like the nerves inside the fingers and everything.
Wow.
And I'm kind of just like, wow, it's so important to have the right people in the right place. And that's where it kind of started. This, and that's been the basis for the whole company. This vision of using AI to improve quality of life by making sure that kind of you have the right person in the right place, and enabling, empowering people to achieve their full potential.
Yeah, that is so. Oh my gosh, it's like I get goosebumps hearing that story. Just like I can almost feel like just the anxiety and fear of that moment and the sense of relief when you hear that, oh my gosh, okay, everything's going to be okay. But
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a little earlier, like timing is just sometimes like the key to everything, right? The timing, having the right person there, right time, right place. And what's really interesting is, so my husband, Taylor, he actually had a really bad accident with one of his fingers too. It got kind of cut, and it was a really deep cut. And he was, when he looked at his finger, when he got into the accident, he was able to see it down to the bone. So it was really bad. And I mean, it wasn't as severe as kind of what happened to, to your son. But when he went to the ER, he had a very different experience. I think they just had whoever was there sew up the wound and then, bandage it up. But I don't think they did a really good job because he still can't feel his finger.
Right.
They didn't do any nerve repairment. And sometimes you wonder, like, well, who should have been there, right, for something like this? So it's really awesome that story inspired you to go into start that company to kind of make sure that everyone has access to this. So say a little more about, how does AI come into play? Like, how do you define what AI is and how does it help here?
Well, the thing we saw in healthcare and with kind of staffing and deployment of people is that it's very manual today. So the staffing coordinators spend a lot of time doing this, and they don't have, there's a limit to how much data you can have in your head about people, like what their competencies is, what their preferences are, when they're available, all of this stuff. So AI can really kind of capture all this data and process it and learn from it, and then be able to find the best person for each assignment. So that's where AI can kind of make this smart better.
Yeah, that's
kind
awesome.
of be a tool for people. So it's not any Skynet, not any kind of sentient being we're creating.
Yeah, I say that as a joke. I mean, I know that AI has so many benefits, but I think at the same time, a lot of people are scared, right? And I don't know if you've seen this meme around that's been going around where, I'll bring it up on the screen in a second, but essentially it's speaking to the fact that, our apps and our phones are always learning about us, right? Mm-hmm. And then when we have a conversation about, let's say, Nike tennis shoes or whatever, for some reason, I'll get an ad about this in an hour. And some people find this as really invasive. I mean, that's, AI really working. So I think there's also a lot of fear from people, and maybe there's misunderstandings, and there's maybe also that myth around AI. So what are like, what's your take on, some of the fears that people have, and what's been your way of explaining how it's actually for good?
Well, I think there are a lot of fears. Like the Skynet thing is probably not very that's far off.
Yeah.
It's not that smart. So I think that that's more of an irrational fear. Talking about like data and how companies learn from that and use that, I think that's something to be conscious about,
Yep.
where you share your data and how it's being used. Definitely. Um, I think another fear people have is like, will it take over my job?
Yeah.
Which is maybe what we're seeing a lot of. And I think in our minds, it's more of a kind of, it empowers people to do a better job. So humans and machines working together, that's a very good combination. You see that with doctors as well, making even kind of helping patients better when machines are helping them interpret these kind of X-ray scans or what have you. So this is how we view it, and the manual tasks is not necessarily something as a person you get a lot of motivation doing.
Yeah.
So you want to do like what humans are good at. You want to do
Right.
the communication part, talk to
Yes.
people,
Yeah.
find customers, like do all of these things that machines can't do.
Yeah.
So I think there will always be a need for people involved, even if there's like more and more AI coming.
Yeah. I love that you bring up that point, because I think so there's this, this chart, this data point. I don't know if it was from the World Economic Forum or where it was. I have to dig this up, but it was trying to predict what some of the most critical skills for the workforce that are going to be coming up, because of the fact that everything's going digital, because of the fact that we have more data science and applied data science. And one of the number one things that's on the list of essential skills for people is having emotional intelligence, right? That's something that machines can't replicate. The ability for someone to show empathy, to see what's, to have that face to face, and then see that, oh, something's wrong, and maybe this is the type of communication, this is the type of tone you need to have. That's something that you can't replace, right? And I think I appreciate you bringing that point, that there's always going to be a need for that human connection, and you can replicate maybe some of it, but not all of it, not to the point where it's actually meaningful the way that I think we humans kind of yearn for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. I saw that, and I think you had mentioned it to me some time ago, that you were in partnership with Microsoft at some point. And I'm curious, can you talk more about that, or is that still kind of something under wraps, or do you have any other stories that you can share of the way that, Globus.AI has been applied with different, different hospitals or medical facilities?
Sure. Yeah. So our main kind of customer base is within staffing agencies.
Yeah.
And specifically we kind of started focusing on healthcare, which is where we saw we could do the most good. So natural place to start. And that we're also working with in Norway. Most of the healthcare is public. So we're
Okay.
also working with kind of public healthcare organizations, making sure they can place their internal staff better, find people when they need it, when someone's sick or needs to go on paternity leave or what have you, summer holiday.
Yeah.
They can quickly find replacement or temps to work those shifts.
So can you share any impacts or any case stories?
Yeah, for staffing agencies, they're really seeing, of course, it's a big time saver for them.
Yeah.
We're kind of taking all the requests coming in, reading them automatically, and matching it with people, handling the communication. So of course, it saves them a lot of time, allows them to spend time on recruitment instead, finding new customers, these kind of things, which they're really good at.
Yeah.
So basically, it also allows them to, in this market, it's first come, first serve. So speed is important. So we allow them to speed up the process, reply first and then get more assignments, basically.
So
they
say
place.
more about that. What do you mean by first come, first serve?
Well, usually a hospital will send a request for people,
Mm-hmm.
staffing agencies. They'll usually send it to several, and then whoever responds first is usually the one to get the assignment.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So instead of like doing all the stuff manually, the AI kind of takes care of for you, and you're able to respond in an instant.
Yeah. So I think you had mentioned this, to me a couple of weeks ago, that your company is kind of at the stage where you're growing, right? You have grown quite a bit in the last couple of years since you started. So I'm curious, where do you think your trajectory is in the next few years?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We've grown quite a lot, like more than we probably could have imagined. We have, of course, we have huge ambitions, but it takes time to build a company.
Yeah.
But in the 2.5 years we've been running now, we're now 38 people. So that's
quite a bit of growth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a big growth, and right now we're in a scale-up phase.
Mm-hmm.
First thing is to kind of get a really good foothold in Scandinavia and Europe. We're kind of in a healthcare vertical now, but we'll expand into other verticals as well.
Okay.
We're working on that, and then it's of course expanding geographically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So you'll probably go pretty global.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that is so interesting to me because, I'm always fascinated by areas that are really like outside of my industry, because I feel like there's so much to learn. And I'm generally fascinated by things I don't really always understand. I mean, data science I agree, was an area where when I started out my career, it was just starting to be kind of like this hot new topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like at the time, people like to use the term analytics, and they still do. And I think what I found at the time and still do is that people use that term wrongly, right? A lot of companies will say they're doing analytics, but they're just doing percentages or doing just simple pie charts, Yeah. And I find that there's still that quite a bit of kind of a skills gap or even knowledge gap out there, even though it's, I don't know what the analogy would be, but it's like, it's something that's really popular that everyone wants to have, but not everyone really understand what it means.
Mm-hmm.
So have you encountered that too, as you've been building out your business, that there are people who may be interested, but you have to do a lot of education or awareness building?
Sure. Yeah. It's, I guess it's always this thing with trends and when words become trendy and what is AI? I don't think everyone has a good grasp of it. A nice definition is maybe that it's whatever machines still can't do.
Huh.
But that's how kind of people imagine AI.
Yeah.
So whenever it becomes commonplace, people don't consider it AI anymore. So the fact that you get autocorrections on your phone, is that AI? It's so common. But in our world, kind of AI is what we think of as machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
So actually learning based on historic data and training machine learning models.
Yeah.
So we use that to then give predictions. And it's actually just a really useful tool to make products smarter. So, yeah.
So one of the things I notice, essentially, especially like with the things I use on a day-to-day, is like Gmail, right? So one of the things I noticed recently in the last few months is that when I try to type out a sentence, before I even finish, Gmail will kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
To say like, it's almost like, is this the sentence you're trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that kind of along the lines of machine learning? Is the prediction based on historical patterns?
Yeah. So then it's learned based on text written by others, by you, and kind of understands and interprets, and then give predictions about what you're probably going to write.
Yeah. The other thing, and I feel like I have to go back to this because I still see this quite a bit, and maybe it's because it's something that people are concerned with, and again, it's an area that not everyone has a grasp around. But cybersecurity seems to be a really big thing today as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the way you describe, like machines learning based on patterns of you and other people, I think for a lot of folks, the instinctual reaction is, what is it learning about me and where is that being kept, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this fear of like, wait, somebody or something knows me so well that I can finish my sentences. And it's this idea of, who has access to this, right? So what's your take on just the security side of machine learning?
Of course, we're doing everything in a very secure manner and anonymizing data when we're training and all that. So, and especially after GDPR came, which we have in Europe, for protecting people's like private information.
Yep.
It's very, very strict what you can do, to maybe the detriment of many data scientists.
Yeah.
But of course, there are both sides. Like if you can do something for good, you can always turn it around and use it for bad purposes. So it's good to be cautious about that.
Yeah.
That's why GDPR. And that's why GDPR is good. Kind of protecting people's data and privacy.
Right. And I think, but that's in Europe, right? Was it the EU? Was it all of Europe?
That's in Europe. Yeah,
that's
EU.
Europe. Yeah. Okay. So I kind of like the example you gave earlier around, that AI is what machines can't do yet. And you gave the example of autocorrecting that your phone does. So do you have another example of where AI is maybe all around us, but we've just taken it for granted because we've gotten used to it and we've accepted it as part of life now?
Interesting question. But kind of the first thing that comes to mind, which I think is really interesting, is of course this self-driving cars. Which is it's kind of on the border. You can see that it's becoming more and more commonplace.
Yeah.
People probably don't trust it very much yet. It's kind of in its infancy, but it's getting better. So you'll probably see at some point that people kind of change their mindset and kind of get used to it being there and cars driving by themselves.
Yeah.
Like, is this AI? This thing? And but right now we're kind of it's really complex and hard to do well.
Right.
So I think that's a good example of something where we haven't broken through yet, but at some point you'll see the shift.
Yeah, I think I always think it's time, right? Like when, I can't remember what someone pointed to, but when you think about like the radio that came on as a technology, there were news articles and people saying that the radio is disrupting family time, it's disrupting the interpersonal interactions, and then when the TV came, there's resistance against that, and then the internet, and then the cell phone. There's always going to be that human resistance, I think. But then after a certain point, you either adapt to it because the newer generation has grown up with that as part of their life, or the way I see it sometimes, it's you either get in front of what's coming, or things are going to change anyway, but it's going to drag you along with it.
Yeah. You can run head first or be dragged along.
Yeah. So really cool that you're leading with AI then, then you're kind of like almost ahead of the game, because you're kind of, in the thick of it, you're leading with it. So
and it's very kind of interesting domain to be in as well, because with this I know with your background as well, looking into kind of what makes people happy at work, motivation, these kind of things. How do you achieve your full potential? There is, I don't know how much AI have you seen a lot of AI kind of helping people with kind of building their career, achieving their potential, these kind of things?
That's interesting. I haven't necessarily seen it in the individual level.
Hmm.
What I've seen that a lot of companies are doing where they make technology for HR, like when you think of like the employee
Hmm.
engagement software, um, or even just predictive analytics that's being practiced by some companies out there that's very mature in this area. One of the things that they find is that if you have an employee or groups of employee who maybe survey at this level, and
Hmm.
this is their feedback about their experience, it's likely that they might turn over, that they might leave, right? That's what
Yeah.
some of the predictive elements of some of these software and these apps are doing, is they're trying to tell you what you need to pay attention to, what are some of the key things that are red flags that you may overlook, right? If somebody has let's say if somebody has a bad performance review, is that really an indication that they're going to leave the company? Most of the time, not very much. It's kind of low risk, right? But
Mm.
if this person turned out to be somebody who's been at the company for, let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to make a number up, for 10 years, they're a high potential, they've always done really well, and then all of a sudden something's happening, and you add all these factors together, what could this mean for this person? And what does this person do for the company? How much of the impact is it going to be for the company if this person leaves? I think
Yeah.
that's the element of the predictiveness that I've seen. I don't know how many companies are using it at a very mature level. I think that's an area where I would be excited to see if more, organizations, and even especially HR organizations, are embracing data this way. But again, it's one of those things that's really hard, right? I think many HR companies or just HR groups have been criticized in the past because HR is not always data driven. And that's why I've seen a lot of thought leadership out there right now about how HR people can embrace data and data science more, because it's an area that there's a gap, right?
Yeah.
We're not using the data to make decisions about promotions, about, engagement, and, just other things. For the individual level, I think that's going to be interesting. I think the closest that I've seen is, when people take self-assessments,
Hmm.
where, they take an assessment around, their personality traits or just their preferences. And sometimes those results are a collective of, the people who've taken those surveys and assessments, right? And then they
Yeah.
might say, well, based on your traits or your preferences, this is probably where you be happier in your job or in your career, and this is a type of work that you may be happier in. um, in some ways that's just maybe good organizational behavior science, but I think it's also about a collection of data and using that data to help people make decisions around their life and career.
And very often it's these kind of point surveys, so they don't follow people over time.
Yeah.
And we kind of see this trend where I don't know. I think it will probably move to more of a flexible workforce kind of thing. People don't stay in the same kind of job, maybe not with
Yeah.
the same company for such long periods of time.
Hmm.
And they want to achieve things in life. They want to experience things. So maybe the combination of kind of using work to allow them to travel to places, to
Hmm.
experience things. So how do you get personalized recommendations about how to achieve that?
Hmm.
That's kind of a very interesting area.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
So
know if I don't want to speak for something that, I don't have knowledge of, but I personally haven't seen anything like that yet. I think it'd be interesting to see um, the industry moving that direction, to be able to help us just make decisions, not just about, oh, this is your career, but it's just your life as a whole, right? And what you can do to embrace it at its fullest.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, hopefully that's the next step, and maybe that's the next vertical you can go into.
That's actually what we're kind of aiming towards in the long run, because we're learning a lot from the data like getting now with all of these shifts where
Yeah.
um, uh, people like the consultants, they're doing a lot of shifts, so we get a lot of data to learn from,
Hmm.
and then we can pick up on these kind of individual preferences, and where do people like to work, why do they change workplaces, why do they move around, like, yeah. And
Yeah.
then that allows you to make or help them make smart decisions about what to do. in their career.
That's pretty cool. So I feel like I would be remiss to not ask you about this. So with the coronavirus pandemic, okay, how's that been for you and your company? Because you're in the healthcare industry. So what are the patterns you're seeing or trends, or are you seeing anything that's notable?
Actually, we had when COVID-19 came to Norway, and we started to see that people got infected a lot. Then that was a busy time for us around beginning of March, I think. We didn't have a focus on the public healthcare sector at that time, but we really saw that there was a need for our application to help them with kind of finding people in that period. So a lot of the healthcare workers went into quarantine. They didn't have enough staff, so patients didn't get the help they needed. So we kind of moved in just a couple of days, moved around the whole team, engaged, worked 24/7 just to be able to kind of deliver a solution to help them out in the situation. Wow. So that was actually very, very motivating for us to be able to help in this way.
Yeah, I bet that's rewarding too, because it's like, even though you're not in the front lines, but you're the people helping those people in the front lines.
Yeah, at least you can do something meaningful to help. So that was
that's awesome. That's pretty cool. So we're kind of coming up at time, and I always like to leave the podcast with something that people can take away. I mean, they can always get something and learn something from the conversation, but what's a piece of wisdom or advice you would share with people just around AI or anything that's kind of that you feel like is in your industry right now?
Well, piece of wisdom. I don't know, live every day being the best person you can be. Try to achieve your fullest. That would be my kind of recommendations.
No, I love that, because you said that's how things got started for you in the company, right? That was the purpose. Yeah.
And of course, any staffing agency listen, they should get in touch.
Yeah. So
sure there's something we can help them with.
Yeah. So speaking of that, how do you want people to get in touch with you? If they want to know more, if they want to talk to you, where should they go?
Actually, on our website, there's a simple form to get in touch. So Globus.AI. I think I've got the branding on my shirt.
There you go. Yeah.
And then it's quite easy to get in touch.
Okay. Yeah. All right, folks. So here is AI on embracing human potential. Again, AI is not as scary as Skynet, and now I've learned so much more. And hopefully you have gotten a lot out of this conversation too. Again, the contact information's down here on the screen. If you have questions for me, or if you have comments on this episode, please drop them here below in the video. And you could always get in touch with me. If you want to get in touch with Globus.AI, go to their website and they have a contact form. So if this resonated with you, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more episodes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.